The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the grocery store aisles, casting their familiar cold glow over the evening shoppers. Sarah Mitchell pushed her squeaky shopping cart through the produce section, her 3-year-old daughter Emma sitting quietly in the front seat, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Sarah's blonde hair fell loosely around her shoulders as she carefully examined each price tag, mentally calculating every dollar. Her jacket, though clean, showed signs of wear at the elbows. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to stretch every penny, selecting only the most essential items. A loaf of bread, a carton of milk, some bananas that were slightly overripe but perfectly good for Emma's breakfast. Emma swung her little legs, her bright eyes taking in the colorful displays around them. She pointed excitedly at the shiny red apples stacked high in neat pyramids. "Mama, look, pretty apples." Sarah smiled, the kind of tired but genuine smile that only mothers know. "Yes, sweetheart, they are very pretty." She glanced at the price and her smile faltered slightly. $3 for a small bag. She reached for the bananas instead, yellow and bruised but half the price. The evening crowd was beginning to thin out as Sarah made her way toward the checkout lanes. She chose the shortest line, hoping Emma wouldn't get too restless. Behind them, other customers loaded their carts with weekend groceries, wine bottles, and packages of fresh seafood. Sarah tried not to compare her modest selection to theirs. As they waited, Sarah opened her small purse and counted the crumpled bills inside. $23. She had been careful, calculating each item as she shopped. The milk was $4.50. The bread was $2.99. The bananas were $1.68. A small container of yogurt for Emma was 99 cents. Some generic pasta was $1.25. A jar of sauce was $2. She should have enough, with a little to spare. Emma began to fidget in the cart seat, and Sarah gently stroked her daughter's hair. "Almost done, baby. Just a few more minutes." The line moved forward slowly. An elderly woman in front of them was having trouble with her coupons, and the teenage cashier looked flustered as she tried to scan each one. Sarah waited patiently, used to these small delays that seemed to fill so much of her daily life. Finally, it was their turn. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes, began scanning Sarah's items one by one. The electronic beep of each scan echoed in the quiet evening store. Beep. The milk. Beep. The bread. Beep. The bananas. Sarah watched the digital display climb higher with each item. 1875, 1950, 2135. Her heart began to beat a little faster. 2467, the cashier announced, his voice flat and disinterested. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She had miscalculated somehow. Maybe the tax. Maybe she had grabbed the wrong pasta sauce. She opened her purse again, her hands trembling slightly as she counted the bills once more. $23. She was short by $1.67. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I think I made a mistake. Can you remove the pasta sauce?" The cashier sighed and looked at the growing line behind her. "Which one? I'll have to void the whole transaction and start over." Other customers began to shift impatiently. Sarah could feel their eyes on her, could sense their irritation at the delay. Emma, picking up on her mother's distress, began to whimper. "The sauce," Sarah whispered, pointing to the jar. "Please just take off the sauce." The cashier's expression showed his annoyance. "Look, lady, I can't just remove one item. I have to cancel everything and rescan it all. There's a line here." A woman behind them muttered something under her breath about people who couldn't count. Sarah's face grew even redder. She felt small and ashamed, standing there with her daughter watching, unable to afford a simple jar of pasta sauce. "Maybe I should just," Sarah began, ready to abandon the entire purchase, when a calm voice spoke from behind her. "Excuse me." Sarah turned to see a man stepping forward from his place in line. He was tall, with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a well-tailored coat that spoke of comfort and success. There was something gentle about his manner, something that made Emma stop whimpering and look at him with curiosity. "I'd like to pay for her groceries," he said simply, addressing the cashier. Sarah's mouth fell open. "Oh no, I couldn't, that's very kind, but I can't accept." The man smiled warmly at her, then knelt down slightly to Emma's level. "Hello there," he said softly. "I love your rabbit. What's his name?" Emma, suddenly shy, buried her face in her stuffed animal. Mr. Hoppy, she whispered. Mr. Hoppy is a very good name for a rabbit, the man said seriously. He stood back up and looked at Sarah with genuine kindness in his eyes. Please, let me help. Everyone needs a hand sometimes. Sarah felt tears building behind her eyes. The simple kindness of a stranger, when she had felt so alone and embarrassed, overwhelmed her. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, the man replied. He handed his credit card to the cashier. And please add the pasta sauce back. Growing girls need their vegetables. He winked at Emma, who giggled despite herself. As the transaction processed, Sarah found her voice. Thank you, she said, the words feeling inadequate. You don't even know me. My name is David, he said, extending his hand. David Chen. And kindness doesn't require an introduction. Sarah Mitchell. And this is Emma. She shook his hand, surprised by the warmth and strength of his grip. The cashier finished bagging their groceries, his earlier irritation replaced by something that looked almost like shame. David took the receipt and handed the bags to Sarah. There's a coffee shop next door, David said as they walked toward the exit. Would you let me buy you and Emma a hot chocolate? It's cold outside. Sarah hesitated. She wasn't used to accepting help, especially from strangers. But something about David's manner put her at ease. There was no pity in his eyes, no sense that he was looking down on her. Just human kindness, offered freely. Emma loves hot chocolate, Sarah said finally. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. David bought Emma the hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and tea for Sarah. As they sat together, Emma colored on the paper placemats with crayons the waitress had brought, and Sarah found herself talking more freely than she had in months. She told David about her job at the local library, how she loved working with books but the pay barely covered their small apartment and basic needs. She talked about Emma's father, who had left when Emma was just 6 months old, and how she was working toward her degree in education through night classes. David listened without judgment, occasionally asking gentle questions or smiling at Emma's chatter about Mr. Hoppy's adventures. He shared a little about himself too, how he had grown up in a small town not unlike this one, how his own mother had sometimes struggled to make ends meet after his father died. She used to say that kindness was the only thing that multiplied when you gave it away, David said, watching Emma carefully arrange marshmallows in her cup. As the evening wound down and the coffee shop began to close, David walked Sarah and Emma to their car. It was an older sedan, reliable but showing its age. As Sarah buckled Emma into her car seat, David quietly slipped something into the grocery bag. Thank you again, Sarah said as she opened her car door. I don't know how to repay you. Just pass it forward someday, David replied. When you're able to help someone else, remember this moment. Sarah drove home with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the tea she'd drunk. Emma fell asleep in her car seat, still clutching Mr. Hoppy. When they arrived at their small apartment, Sarah carried Emma inside and put her to bed before unpacking the groceries. At the bottom of one bag, she found an envelope. Inside was a note written in David's careful handwriting, for Emma's future. Education changes everything. D.C. Attached was a check that made Sarah sink into her kitchen chair in shock. It was enough to cover not just groceries for months, but her remaining tuition for the education degree she'd been slowly working toward. Enough to give Emma the opportunities Sarah had always dreamed of providing. Sarah wiped away the tears that had started falling again. Tomorrow, she would find David Chen, it wouldn't be hard in their small town, and thank him properly. She would also start planning how to pay his kindness forward, just as he had asked. But tonight, she simply held the check and marveled at how one moment of human kindness could change everything. In a grocery store checkout line, surrounded by the fluorescent lights and everyday mundane troubles of ordinary life, she had been reminded that there was still goodness in the world. And somewhere across town, David Chen was smiling as he thought about a little girl named Emma and her mother Sarah, and how sometimes the smallest gestures could create the biggest ripples of hope.